So I'm Andy, I'm the founder and CEO of Tuna Gear. I also happen to be the chief tyer at Tuna Gear. What we're going to do today is I'm going to run you through how I tie one of the bars. This bar in particular is the 14 drop design, and it's going to be with the infamous Tuna Gear directional bird. These are the Blue Max, and I'm going to run you through the whole process start to finish. These are a really good colour. We've done really well on the commercial boat this year with them. Sort of Blue Max imitates the mackerel is my thought process. First thing to do, they always come with a foam wedged inside. What we used to do is pierce the hole, and then when you see me cut the top off in a bit, we used to use that as the buoyancy. What I always found was they'd fill with water, and there's no way for the water to come back out the other side. It makes the bar sink, which is not what you want. So we've now gone, or I've now gone to floats in there, cigar floats, which you'll see in a minute. So we'll strip these out. The one thing these do come in handy for, because we use the VMC hooks, which are like pin sharp, I'll use these later on. Love the bite. We've got the whole lot. Next we need are our snips. So what you want to do is, or what I do is very neatly just take the top off. I don't want to take too much off. I see some of them, they come like right down in here. Once we've got all of these off, time for the pokey. Don't want to stick it in your hand. I've done that, it really, really hurts. So we're just priming these up because obviously we're going to thread these through the top. Again, not too big a hole. You don't want too much water passing through these. You want to keep them as buoyant as possible. So now they're all pierced up, we're ready to go. I always start from the outside and work my way in. So we're going to start with the two side flanks first, which have got the two squids on them. Everything on this bench is jigged, be it the size of squid that I'm using, down to the loops, down to the side of line that I need. So what we're using here, this is 250 pound, this is Grand Slam. This stuff is the best about. It's used all over the world, you know, why use anything else? I'm a massive fan of it. It's got really good, it's got a low diameter, it's really abrasive stuff. Like we've had it where it's rubbing up inside on the side of the boats when we're bringing fish to the side, and it just keeps going and going. Some would say bomb proof. So we're going for the sides first. That lives back up there. We need two floats. What really helps is a bit of a point. And in we go. Cigar float, these are a 2.5 inch cigar float. I like reds, you'll see in a bit. On the Max they don't show up quite so much, but on the Hulks, the Albacores, and the UV Cuttles, luckily, here's one I prepared earlier, you can really see the floats through them. Just adds that extra bit of attraction in the water. Let's go for a crimp. Same procedure again. Thread him up. Float, bead, crimp. Bench crimp. This is called Jaws. This is the only thing you should be crimping with. If you're using hand crimps, go home, not interested. Do not get a consistent crimp with them in any way, shape or form. You have to be using a bench crimp. We're going to set this one first. And when you're bench crimping, you want to be particularly picky about it. Don't just slap it in the jaws. You want to make sure it's sat in there perfectly. You want a little bit either side of it. In it goes, down. What we've got there is a perfect crimp, and then it's perfectly flared down through either side of it, and at each end you have a lip on there. That is the perfect crimp. It's consistent pressure all the way through. Like these are never even going to see the pressure of a fish. So you could, you know, technically you could slap these on any way you wanted, but that's just bad practice. Everything should be to the highest standard possible. So where everything's jigged, now all I have to do is I sit it in the holder, whatever size squid I'm using, you bring it up to the end, bring it round, back into jaws. Again, the perfect crimp, flared at both ends, float up inside. There's number one. The birds to the party. These are trolling birds. These are the 5-inch ones. thread them up. Always have to play with these a bit because they're plastic molded. So that one goes onto there. Now there's different drops. There's different drops on these because of the way that the bird sits on the bar. This drops down lower. So I run the flanks at one height and then I run the inner two flanks at a different height. So we come to the end, mark it up. We come 60 up to our 150. So we're going to use a crimp. I use a loop protector on absolutely everything. I've seen people, some people use like it's like a big thick piece of nylon tube basically. Everything I do, and you'll hear me say it over and over, is metal on metal, even on the flanks. So this is a line protector. I've only got a couple done at the moment, so we'll knock some up. Again, with everything, it's jigged. So I've got a mark for everything. So everything's consistent. You don't want to be getting different sizes, wrong sizes. This just gives everything a bit more longevity, especially it's getting dragged through the water, it's getting pulled backwards and forwards by fish. Any opportunity, any weak point, even though this isn't ever going to see the part of the fish, you just want it to last. So, crimp, we go on. These are the crane swivels. These are 250-pound crane swivels designed to take a 4mm bar, which you'll see in a bit. So on goes the loop protector, crimp, loop protector, crane swivel, put it up to my mark, through we go, put it back down to where it wants to be, there we go, set. Again, the perfect crimp, cut off the excess. So we go and hang it up. Here's one, ready for an order. So now it's just time to repeat the process. So we'll pull another piece of line off onto our mark. Float, bead, crimp, bead, next crimp, one for jaws. Perfect. Everything pulled up inside, tentacles out the way, onto its mark. Always give them a little pull to make sure it's all set properly, otherwise you get lines out. Back into jaws. So up onto its mark. Then we go crimp, loop protector, crane swivel. Put it down to its mark. Pull tight. Over to the bench crimp. And there we go. Well, I fucked that one up. Back to the board. So what we've just done there on those two are the two outside flanks. The furthest left and the furthest right. We're now going to come in one. So these now both have a 3 drop on them. So we go to our mark, second drop. This one is going to have the 3. So repeat the process. Through the top, cut a point on your mono and it soon goes through. So float, bead, crimp, last one, pokey, and thread. Float, bead, crimp, and we go across to jaws. 1. What I always find is one of these floats works perfectly at 2.5. Anything lighter and you get sinking problems, And over buoyancy can be an issue as well. If you have too many bigger floats in there, you actually get a bit of a problem where it bounces off the top of the wave too much. Double check our mark. Last one. So we're going to rig the bird up. This one sits a bit different. See if we can get this one to thread. Well, there we go. Perfectly threaded on the 1800th attempt. Crimp, loop protector, and a crane swivel. So what's different here is we don't have the drop. So this time we just thread straight through as tight as you can get it to the top of that bird. Bird touches squid, crimp touches bird. Done. Hang this one up. Let's do it again. So we'll go down to our mark again. I was trying to work it out the other day. Like, I've tied over 1,000 bars now. So when you're pulling them through at the top, always leave yourself a little bit of slack, because one thing, that's another reason I cut the hole so tight, because when you're threading all this on, I've done it many times, this is why there's a process behind it. You get to the end one, you give it a pull and the line comes through the squid, and there's no way of rethreading the squid from the bottom up, so you've got to cut it all up and start again. Float, bead, crimp, here we go, squid, bead. See, almost got that wrong. No float. So that's why I repeat everything to myself all the time. I didn't hear the float word. Thread you up. Float. Bead. Crimp over to jaws. Into the mark. That's number 2. Check. Because one of my favourite things to do is get the 17-inch mark, and then you get wrong onto there. And there we go, perfect. 5th time lucky. So then crimp, loop protector. So again, you want the bird touching squid, crimp touching bird. Giving away all my trade secrets here. Perfect. And over into jaws. So here, so that's the outside flank left, outside flank right, and this is the inside flank left and right. Now we're going to tie up what is basically the centre section. So this is where we go to the 400 pound. This is 250 pound we've been using here. We're now going to go to 400 pound because this is the point that's in contact with the fish. We have our 400 pound. What we're going to do first is repeat the process all the way through again, just with a couple of different changes. So at the bottom of this one, we're going to have a 600 pound. Some people call them snap swivels. I like to call them a quick change swivel. This is what our stinger is going to be attached to. So we'll start the process, thread it up first, and then we'll work our way backwards. So float, swivel, crimp. Next one, I really like these Blue Max. Really, really like these. They look so good in the water. Float. These actually caught our 2nd biggest fish of the year. That one was dressed, which is, obviously this is on the commercial, some of you probably won't like this very much. That's head off, tail off and gutted. I think that rolled in at 128 kilos. Seeing this year we've had a lot of smaller fish, which is a good sign because it means they've been breeding somewhere. I think over in Europe, they've had a clamp down on the size of their quota, which is really helped. So this is the last one going on. This one we do a little bit different because, like I said, this is having the quick change swivel on it. Thread this. Still needs its float, but now we're going to bring it over to the bench. We're going to make the 150 loop mark, 2 crimps, loop protector, swivel. So now we go on, and what we're going to do is, so we thread them. So I'll bring that up to the end there, put my second one on, and this is where we go for a thimble. So you will hear me talking lots and lots about metal on metal. So all the other ones on those flanks, because they were only having a crane swivel in there, like this is a good comparison. So there's a crane swivel. This one's actually got a pull point on it from the fish. So I don't believe that just having that loop protector by itself is enough. So we add the thimble into the mix. So thimble sits inside there. What you really want to make sure when you're doing this as well, because you're pulling, you get a slight offset of pull, which means that thimble can slightly sit one way or the other depending on how you've pulled. So you just want to spend a minute making sure that's perfectly straight so that you're getting a consistent, so when there's pull on that, it's always a straight on pull. Into jaws, so in, absolutely perfect. Now this is where the second crimp comes in. This is the safety crimp. It's a safety crimp because if there was ever to be a piece of slippage somewhere here, you've got this one sat in the background. Never had one slip, never intended on having one slip, but it's there, it's booting braces. When I do mine, I like to have a parallel line between the two. I've seen other people that tie them and they like to twist this line here first a couple of times around it like that, and then they crimp it, so it looks something like that. There's gaps in the line then. I don't see how that adds any strength into it at all. Personally, I think it's a weak point. I've spoken to other people about it as well who have got far more tuna fishing knowledge than I have, and they agree with me on it. I don't know why they do it. You know, whenever you're tying a knot on a line, you're making a weak point. We're using a crimp because it's stronger. So tying a knot, when you tie a knot, you have to loop something. So if you're looping that, that just has to be a weak point. So if it was to slip, it's slipping at a weak point. And there we go. So what you'll hear, metal on metal, metal on metal. At no point when that fish is pulling like that and you're pulling back the other way, that is just metal on metal pulls. There's no line there at all. So we'll set this one and then we're just going to repeat the process. So we'll put them back on the jig, set everything. So when I'm doing these on the main line as well, I don't crimp as hard. I don't go all the way down. What I'm doing there is I'm just putting enough in there so there's some bite on the line so that when these squids are being pulled, they're not going to slip. But I don't crimp them all the way down because I don't want too much compression on that line, because this is the pull point. You know, if you over crimp or something like that, or something goes wrong, you might be putting a weak spot in there. So just in case, I just don't do it. So again, just a half crimp down. Give it a pull to make sure everything's tight inside the previous one, and then just a part crimp again. That is our main stinger line. That's the 4. There's the quick end. Now we're just going to finish it off this end where it's going to attach into here. So what we're going to do here, we've set the bird. Now, because of the way that the 2 outside flanks sit and the way that the bar sits through here, so your bar's running through there, you've got this dip down point. So we put our bird on that mark, first mark, and we put our second mark. And it's the same process as when we're attaching that quick change down the bottom. So we are going to need 2 crimps. We're going to need a loop protector. So what we've got there, 2 crimps, line protector, and we've got our 2 marks on the line. So let's thread him up. 1 through, 2 through. And all I'm doing is I'm pulling down until my marks line up. just like that. So I now know that I've got my loop is consistently the same size because I've got my marks there. But this drop here, when it's attached onto the back of the bird, will give me the same size drop that's on those outside flanks. All we're going to do, because everything we do where there's a pull is metal on metal, in goes the thimble. Make sure our marks are still lined up. Make sure that's sat in there lovely. To jaws. Pull our second one up. There we go. One last piece, shackle. This is something I've changed recently. So shackle can go on here for a minute while we wait. As you'll see in a bit, connects to the underside, it will connect to the underside of here. So what you'll end up with is it sitting like this through the bird. And that is a bar. We're gonna prep the bird now. So the thing we use, this is 316 stainless. It's a really good bar. I used to use 3mm. I've gone to 4, went to 4 by the time we got to the Mark II bird. The difference in stiffness between a 3mm and a 4mm is 300%. So what we need to do is we need the drill, we need the battery charger. Where's my battery gone? Where's my battery gone? Oh, brilliant.
What's this?
That's exactly what you put that there, didn't you? You put that there.
I swear.
So now we found our drill, found our battery, which Matthew found. Just got to open this hole up a little bit. So we're going to thread the bar, and I have these on the end to lock everything into place. Some nice lock ends. What is generally easier to do is set it. The only thing that a hand crimp is good for is tapping. They're no good for crimping. So, like everything, we're on the mark. So what we're going to do now, instead of using jaws, we're going to go to jaws 2. Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. On here and on here, I like to heat shrink them all. Open it up, one on. I'm going to bring it down here. So once I've got them like this, so this is when you see all the hashtags on Facebook and Instagram about hand tied in South Devon, built different, etc, etc. Every single bar you'll see on the website, I go through this process. So now we're going to bring in the flanks. So we're going to go 250 for the center. Take that away from there. We're going to go over to jaws 2. Bring to the other side. There, perfect. So there's number 1. Now we're going to repeat the process on this side. Centered, marked. So there's our 2 outside, there's our 2 inner flanks, outside flanks. Number 1, starting to look like a bar. And then we're going to go into the crimp. And there we have most of what we're ready to do. So now it's just time to hang it. So there's the bar. So this is where that swivel comes into its own now. I did used to have them just double crimp with a bench crimp onto there. Didn't like it. So now all I've got to do, now I've got it hung, as you can see, we have, here's the 2 outside flanks that I've been talking about, how they drop down further. Here's the inner 2 flanks, how they're tighter up. Now we're just going to attach our center line, which is basically the stinger line. Now that I've got shackles to do it, you can just push that one through here. So what we then have is these 3 are in line, these 2 are sat higher. If you ever get a problem with this line, all the other bars on the market seem to be attached how I was doing it with the thimble straight to here, you'd have to recut everything, and unless you've got a bench crimp sat at home, you're gonna have to replace the whole bar. You can just simply undo the shackle, and if this does get caught, you know, on decks, rubbing against the side of the boat, that sort of thing, it does happen, we can just retire you a whole new one. We're probably even going to do a service where you just post it back to us, we'll reuse your squid, and I'll just retire it for you. If you're a good enough customer, you might get it for free. So that is the final Blue Mac bar. So you've got the Tuna Gear directional bird, so all fish either side, port or starboard, out the back of the boat. There's all the flanks. So that's like I ran through earlier. This is £250 Grand Slam, £250, £250, £250, £250. This is £400 all the way through. Down on the bottom is your quick change swivel to attach your stinger to, and all you simply have to do, main line attached up to there, or your leader, which will be on one of these quick change swivels anyway, straight on. Let's go fishing. So the final process, it's all tied, it's all ready to go. The final bit is to put it into one of the mesh bags it comes supplied in. So if I pull one of those down, these are the mesh bags you get. Keep saying mesh for a reason, because it's on the back. When the gear goes in, it's always going to be wet. This just allows them to drain. Logoed up as always. Let's sit it in there. 2 on one side. Even when you're packing them away in the bags, always try to do it neat. I always send them out neat. You've just had a fish, one of the bars is sat there on the side, you want to put a fresh bar out or something like that. It's the same with your stingers, always put everything away really neat. You can't get any, you know, nothing wraps around itself in the bag. It just comes straight out and it's ready to go. So this is packaged, ready to go out. There we go. One ready to go bag. Tuna Gear, Blue Max, 15-inch squids on the directional bird. Deadly.